On February 6, 2025, President Donald Trump took a dramatic step, issuing an executive order that unleashed a wave of sanctions against the International Criminal Court, or ICC. This move sent shockwaves through the international community, drawing sharp criticism from human rights groups and several world leaders. Trump's order, announced during Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Washington, marked a significant escalation in his administration's long-standing adversarial stance towards the ICC. The order's primary targets were the ICC's top officials, along with individuals and entities deemed to be providing support to the court's investigations and prosecutions. The ICC, headquartered in The Hague, Netherlands, is an independent judicial body established by the Rome Statute in 2002. Its primary mandate is to investigate and prosecute individuals accused of the gravest crimes under international law, including genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, and the crime of aggression. The court's jurisdiction, however, is limited to situations where the accused is a national of a state party to the Rome Statute, the alleged crimes occurred on the territory of a state party, or the situation is referred to the court by the United Nations Security Council. Trump's decision to impose sanctions against the ICC stemmed from the court's ongoing investigations into alleged war crimes committed by both Israeli forces and Palestinian militants in the occupied Palestinian territories, including the Gaza Strip. The ICC's investigations, opened in 2021, have been a source of significant contention and have drawn fierce opposition from both Israel and the United States. Both countries argue that the ICC lacks jurisdiction in this case, as Israel is not a state party to the Rome Statute and has not consented to the court's jurisdiction. The executive order, invoking the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA, and other legal authorities, granted the Trump administration broad powers to target ICC officials and their supporters with a range of punitive measures. These measures include the freezing of assets held within U.S. jurisdiction, travel bans prohibiting entry into the United States, and restrictions on financial transactions involving U.S. individuals and entities. The ICC's decision to open an investigation into the situation in Palestine, including alleged war crimes committed during the 2014 Gaza war, was met with immediate condemnation by Israel and its allies, including the United States. Israel, which has long accused the ICC of bias against it, refused to cooperate with the court's investigation and denounced the ICC's actions as politically motivated. The United States, despite not being a member of the ICC, echoed Israel's concerns and expressed strong opposition to the court's investigation. In November 2024, the ICC issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, accusing them of war crimes and crimes against humanity related to their roles in the 2014 Gaza war. The warrants alleged that Israeli forces under their command had committed war crimes by indiscriminately targeting civilians and civilian infrastructure in Gaza, resulting in widespread death and destruction. The issuance of arrest warrants against sitting Israeli leaders further inflamed tensions between the ICC and its critics. Israel dismissed the warrants as baseless and accused the ICC of overstepping its mandate. The United States, under President Trump, condemned the warrants as an affront to Israel and vowed to protect its ally from what it perceived as politically motivated prosecutions. The ICC's investigation and the subsequent arrest warrants triggered a wave of legislative efforts in the United States aimed at shielding Israeli officials from prosecution. In January 2025, the U.S. House of Representatives passed a bill that would have allowed the imposition of sanctions against ICC officials involved in the investigation of Israel. The bill, however, faced strong opposition in the Senate and ultimately failed to pass. Trump's executive order, titled "Blocking Property of Certain Persons Associated with the International Criminal Court," targeted a wide range of individuals and entities deemed to be involved in or supportive of the ICC's investigation and prosecution of Israeli officials. The order authorized the U.S. government to block all property and interests in property within U.S. jurisdiction, belonging to individuals designated by the Treasury Department. The executive order specifically targeted ICC prosecutor Karim Khan, who had been leading the investigation into alleged war crimes in Palestine. Khan, along with other ICC officials involved in the investigation, were designated by the Treasury Department as specially designated nationals, effectively freezing their assets and prohibiting U.S. individuals and entities from engaging in any transactions with them. Beyond targeting ICC officials directly involved in the investigation, the executive order also cast a wider net, authorizing sanctions against individuals and entities deemed to be providing material assistance to the ICC's efforts. This broad language raised concerns among human rights groups and legal experts, who argued that it could be used to target a wide range of actors, including human rights defenders, witnesses, and victims seeking to cooperate with the ICC. The executive order's expansive scope extended to family members of targeted individuals, authorizing the U.S. government to block property and impose travel bans on spouses and children of ICC officials and others designated under the order. This provision drew particular criticism from human rights groups, who denounced it as a form of collective punishment that would unfairly impact innocent individuals. The legal arguments, a foundation of contention. The Trump administration defended its decision to impose sanctions against the ICC by citing a number of legal justifications, primarily rooted in the assertion that the ICC had overstepped its jurisdiction and was engaged in politically motivated prosecutions. The administration argued that the ICC, as a treaty-based organization, lacked jurisdiction over nationals of states that were not parties to the Rome Statute, such as the United States and Israel. The executive order invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, known as IEPA, as its primary legal basis for imposing sanctions. IEPA, enacted in 1977, grants the U.S. President broad authority to regulate or block financial transactions in response to national emergencies declared in relation to threats originating outside the United States. The Trump administration argued that the ICC's actions constituted an unusual and extraordinary threat to U.S. national security and foreign policy interests, thus justifying the invocation of IEPA. In addition to IEPA, the executive order cited the National Emergencies Act, or NEA, as further legal justification for the sanctions. The NEA, passed in 1976, established procedures for the president to declare national emergencies and exercise emergency powers. The Trump administration argued that the ICC's investigation and arrest warrants against Israeli officials constituted a national emergency that warranted the exercise of presidential emergency powers. The legal justifications put forward by the Trump administration were met with skepticism and criticism from legal scholars and human rights advocates. Critics argued that the ICC, as an independent judicial body, was acting within its mandate and that the United States was overstepping its bounds by attempting to interfere with the court's judicial processes. They further argued that the invocation of IEPA and NEA was a misapplication of these laws, which were never intended to target international judicial institutions. Global backlash and uncertain future. The Trump administration's decision to impose sanctions against the ICC triggered widespread condemnation from human rights organizations, legal experts, and several world leaders. Human Rights Watch denounced the sanctions as a direct attack on international justice and a gift to dictators and war criminals around the world. Amnesty International echoed these sentiments, calling the sanctions a dangerous assault on the global fight against impunity. The European Union, a staunch supporter of the ICC, expressed serious concern over the U.S. sanctions and reaffirmed its unwavering support for the court as an independent and impartial judicial institution. Several EU member states, including France and Germany, summoned U.S. ambassadors to express their displeasure with the sanctions. The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres expressed concern over the U.S. sanctions and emphasized the importance of international justice mechanisms. Guterres reiterated the UN's unwavering commitment to upholding the rule of law and ensuring accountability for grave crimes. The ICC, in response to the U.S. sanctions, issued a statement expressing regret over the Trump administration's decision and vowing to continue its work undeterred. The court emphasized its independence and impartiality, stating that it operates without fear or favor. The long-term consequences of the Trump administration's sanctions against the ICC remain uncertain. The sanctions could have a chilling effect on the court's work, potentially deterring states and individuals from cooperating with its investigations and prosecutions. They could also further damage the already strained relationship between the United States and the international community on issues of international law and human rights.